Hey, I'm Brittany. I'm converting my first-gen Toyota Sequoia into a stealth camper. Today I'm going to be installing the floor. I have a 1-inch piece of foam board to use as the insulation and a 3/4-inch piece of plywood to use as the subfloor. I'll probably go back in afterwards and add a vinyl, probably just like something peel and stick, easy to install, just so it's a little bit more durable. But first I need to make those cuts and then sand it down, get it all secured to the ground. Okay, trust me, I'm very aware of how messy my garage is, and I maybe should have cleaned it before I started another project, but what sounds more fun? Building a camper or cleaning your garage? So, got limited space, but I think I'll make it work, at least for the foam board. I'm gonna start with this because it'll be easier to manipulate. Again, I'm just doing a straight cut across. When I measured again, I should be able to get 76 inches. And once I cut this, I'll kind of confirm that that's correct for the plywood. So. I was going to use the jigsaw for this, but on second thought, I think I can actually just use my X-Acto knife, and that will create less toxic dust. Okay, so now I'll load this up in the car and see how it fits. And voila, it is a perfect fit. Okay, so you can see here's the drop off. I do have, of course, these brackets that I need to cut around. Now that I'm seeing this next to it, might be a little bit more than 1 inch, but I'm not too worried about it. Okay, this might not be the best way to go about it. I just kind of roughed out where those brackets were, and I oversized my cutout because this stuff is pretty squeaky, and so I don't want it rubbing against them while I'm driving. But I have their rough shape on one side, and I'm just gonna try to cut it from the other side to get it all the way out. I was able to make the blade just a little bit longer so that hopefully I won't have to actually break any of this. Okay, so the notches are all aligned, and I think you can see how, again, the foam brings up the height of the floor, but I wanted to test it out, so I brought out my T-square. Oops. And it's like a little bit higher than the foam board. I mean, I'm gonna guess like 1/8 of an inch. So I either need to find something I can put under, no, that's not gonna work. I'll probably just have to router out some of the underside of my plywood, which is gonna be a little bit annoying, but again, not too big of a deal. So my original plan was to use the jigsaw because I thought I was gonna be cutting out of shape, but since I'm just doing a straight line, I'm gonna be using a circular saw. Honestly, I think the most difficult part of this is going to be getting this piece of plywood up onto the sawhorses, because I can't lift this by myself. But especially because I would just lay it over here, but since this is going to be the bottom side, I need this to be face up on the sawhorses so that when I cut it, the rough edge ends up on the bottom of my plywood. So, I don't think I'm gonna film myself trying to get this up here, because that's gonna be pretty embarrassing. yeah, I'll just cut it if it's bad. Look at that. Okay. I just wanted that third one to support the weight, so it doesn't drop until after I cut it. It's not even sitting on that middle one though, so looks like it's a little bit bent. This is definitely not a tutorial on how to use a circular saw. This will be my first time using one independently. Obviously I've seen them used or have had some guided practice, but the way that they cut, they're going to tear up one side of your board, so you want the ugly side, the side that's not going to show, and the side that's going to get torn up on top, at least according to the YouTube video I just watched. So hopefully that is correct. Otherwise I'll have a lot of sanding to do, especially since this is plywood. It really tends to tear. I do have some safety goggles that I'm going to be wearing. So here goes. Another important thing to remember is that the blade takes off about a half an inch. I'm sorry, not half an inch, 1/8 of an inch, depending on how thick your blade is. So you want to make sure that you're cutting on the correct side of the line. If your measurement actually matters, of course, if it actually matters, you're probably also going to want to clamp down a guide. Since mine's not super critical, I'm just going to eyeball it and hope that that works. I guess there's a lock on it that I don't know. I also need to be going the other way. I need to put my weight on this side of the board. So I have a phone call to make. Okay, a couple things since I'm going from the other side. I moved my line over 1/8 of an inch so that I can use the guide here and yeah, that should work. Okay, I know my blade is getting hung up because my two boards are not supported correctly. What I don't know is how to get that last little inch. Seems to be like a really hard spot. I think it's one of the knots, maybe? Huh. There's quite a bit there though. I think it was working alright. So when I moved that line over 1/8 of an inch, it looked like the blade was gonna be hitting to the right, but it was not. So I actually didn't need to do that, and I noticed halfway through, but that's always scary. I'm like, did I cut myself? Anyway, I figured, again, my measurement wasn't super important, so I guess I could go back and take that off, but I don't think it's necessary, so. Guess you guys probably want to see if I can actually figure out how to get this into my car all by myself. It's gonna be a little bit lighter, obviously, but not that light, so just start by getting it onto the floor. That's one way. No. That actually just seems like a waste of time because I know it's gonna fit, and I still need to sand this, router out the bottom of that, and dynamite the inside of my car. So I'm gonna hold off on actually loading it up. But at least I got the cut done. And I think it turned out pretty straight considering I didn't use a guide. So, yeah. Okay, we're gonna router out those grooves. So I just used the foam board to kind of mark it out. I, again, am not concerned with it being super form-fitting. As long as there's a little bit of space, it'll be fine. He said, don't get a close-up of it. But it's the underside. Who cares if it's a little sloppy? Okay, so to attach the floor, I'm going to be drilling into these existing holes. Again, these were tie-downs, but I have to obviously map out where to drill a hole in my foam board and my plywood. So this technique, we're gonna see if it works. I basically just put down some painter's tape, and where they intersect is the center of the hole. I did mark it with pencil too, just in case something happens to these, but I'm gonna try to put the foam board on top, lay these back down, and hope that that works. Now I'm gonna start with the foam board, so I can drill the hole a little bit larger, and then I'll use that as a template to actually drill the plywood. And then for these holes over here, I just laid down a piece of painter's tape all the way across, marked where the holes would be on the painter's tape, and measured how far that would be from these holes. So I'll show you on the foam board once I get that all set up. Okay, so my first hole should go approximately right here, but again, I'll have a little bit of wiggle room with this foam board. Okay, so this strategy worked okay. If you look, you can see I did find the hole. My initial point was just a little bit off though, so if you're not using a foam board and you're just going straight into the plywood, I highly recommend making a template out of paper so you have some wiggle room. But anyway, so now I'm going to cross some tape over that point to figure out exactly where that hole is, and measure out those other two holes. So I think my painter's tape template was good in theory, but it is quite windy today. And yeah, I just blew that shut. Yeah, I messed this up, so I'm gonna have to make a new template. I think I found a solution. The tricky part is going to be doing this without moving the foam board. So basically I just carefully lifted it up and I put one of the smaller bolts into the hole, but it's obviously, you can see it's poking up. And now I'm just going to press on the foam board and you can hear it making an impression. And so then I'll drill from that side to find my hole. Okay, I do have all 4 screws or bolts placed, which means I should be able to take this foam board out and use it as my template on my plywood. I know this is gonna be really difficult to see, but I did crisscross the tape down there so that I can see where the center of my hole should be, and hopefully that'll work. I like to drill a little pilot hole before I go in with the larger diameter drill bit. These bolts are different sizes. These 2 are for the tie downs in the front, and then these 2 are the ones in the back. So I'm gonna need to use 2 different drill bits, and they were metric. I'm gonna make sure these actually work before I bother telling you what they are. But I think I'll use the 1/4 drill bit for the smaller ones. Looks like it's a little bit larger, but the 3/16 was too small. And then probably have to use a 5/16. Yeah, for the other one I'll be using at least a 5/16, but again, based on how centered these are, I might have to open it up a little bit more. Okay, the 1/4 bit seemed to work out just fine for these in the back. You can see it moves pretty easily. I couldn't find like a flathead version of this size thread and everything, so I think I'm going to use a router to try and countersink it. Although ultimately this will go under the cabinets and under the bed, so I'm not super concerned if it ends up sticking out. It'll just look a little bit nicer if I can sink it down. And the 5/16 worked for the front bolts. They might need to be opened up a little bit more. It's a little tight. Guess we'll see how close I was when I used that template. Okay, for my floor, I have the other side, which will be the top, sanded. Have my holes drilled. So I'm just going to attach the foam board. I'm going to be using an adhesive silicone so that it doesn't squeak as I'm moving down the road. I did purchase a trim that'll arrive tomorrow, so I'll put that on. And then I should be able to get this installed so that I can put all the pieces to the bed together, because again, I'm waiting to actually attach the top until I see where the frame is gonna sit on the actual, like inside the actual SUV. Okay, so I purchased some Loctite. Oh, broke my scissors. I'm going to use my bolts to make sure those holes are lined up. This is my attempt at flattening out that piece of plywood. Hopefully if I leave this sitting all day, the heat and weight will kind of straighten that out. So that one, the foam board sticks, and two, so my floor is flat. Okay, let the glue dry overnight. The plywood is still very curved. That's probably gonna be a problem, but I'm hoping once I get the bed and the cabinets and everything on here, it'll flatten out a little bit. Otherwise, I'll just be walking on a curved ground. But anyway, the foam sticks out a little bit, so I'm gonna trim that down with the saw so that I can adhere the veneer. Okay, that made quite the mess, so I used the shop vac to kind of clean it up a little bit. Okay, I've got some wood veneer that I purchased on Amazon. It's heat activated, so I should just be able to iron it. I'm not sure how well it's going to stick to the foam, so I might end up using wood glue instead. But I'll try it out on this edge, see if it works. Okay, I'm gonna let that cool for a minute before I try to trim it. I want to attempt trimming it before I go on to the other side, so I know how difficult it's gonna be. Side note, I did have the iron on high. I was a little worried it might burn the wood, but I don't see any marks. Okay, I suspect that this side's going to be a little bit more difficult just because it's longer, but also because the wood is curved. Give it a shot. I also made sure I had a lot more veneer here. Oh, here's where the curve is going to be an issue. Okay, this is probably a really dumb way to do it, but again, my board is curved upwards, so I'm having a hard time following that curve with my straight veneer. So I'm glued down this side and I'm letting it cool, and now I glued down this side and I'm letting it cool, and I'm just going to try to manipulate this middle part to attach as best as possible. Ultimately, these sides aren't going to show, so I guess it's not that big of a deal. Is again some overkill, but hopefully I can get it approximately to fit. I'm going to show you what I ended up doing over here. So I veneered this side. You can see it's a little dimply where the foam is because the foam is not super flat. It is sticking to the foam pretty well though. Anyway, so I glued down that side, then I glued down this side, and it created this centerpiece that was kind of bubbling up because again, they didn't want to quite match. So I cut out these angled pieces. Sorry for you perfectionists, that is as close as I could get it. If it makes you feel better, again, this side isn't gonna show. And that'll also give some flexibility when this piece does hopefully flatten out so that the veneer doesn't rip off. But anyway, so when it cools down a little bit more, Actually, I might need to reheat this one. Looks like it slipped a little bit. But I'll trim it up and then move on to the next side. Okay, a couple issues on this side. First of all, the foam did not stay attached because, again, of the curvature of this piece of wood. So I have it clamped, but it's also, when I was moving everything around to flatten it out, the foam board shifted underneath because I didn't have any clamps to secure it. So it's not flush with my wood at all. I'm not going to be able to stick the veneer to this. So I have two options. I have to think about it for a second. I can veneer the top part and then veneer the foam separately, or just kind of run the veneer across like it is one piece, but obviously there's going to be an air gap here, which is not going to make it very durable. I think what I'm going to do is both. I think I'm going to veneer this and then veneer over. That way, if it does break, I can cut it off and this will still have some veneer on it. And hopefully that'll look all right. Because this side will show when I open up my trunk. And really this is the main reason I'm adding veneer, so it kind of sucks that this side's gonna give me the most problems. Okay, I changed my mind about adding the veneer over it because there's just no way that's gonna hold up when I'm getting in and out of the car. Ideally, this is what it's gonna look like. I will go back in with the sander to try to smooth out this edge because, again, it's hard to cut a straight line against the foam, and I just used scissors. But I should be able to use my sander to straighten this out a little bit. All right, one last edge. Okay, it's ready for one last sand on the edges to try to smooth out some of the veneer. Then I'm gonna vacuum out my car one last time and move it in, get this installed. I did get my floor installed, but I ended up doing it all off camera. So here's just a couple notes of how I did it, how it went. So first of all, I put the plywood in. You can see the veneer that I added is already getting pretty torn up just from moving it into the car. So I'll probably go back and add another trim. And then I did add this shoe. It's a flexible plastic shoe. It is paintable, but I think I'm just gonna leave it white. Anyway, so this ended up being a huge pain in the ass for a couple of reasons. One, because the plywood is so warped. I swear it was flat when we bought it. But it has this bow going across, but then also it is bowed going that way as well. So that was an issue. Trying to line up the holes. Again, I was using the existing holes from the tie downs that were already here. I am like 99% sure that these are metric bolts, and I got the closest match that I could find at Home Depot, but they still felt like they just didn't fit quite right. But it isn't moving, so I feel like it's good enough. And then I did obviously add some vinyl on top. It's just peel and stick. It was pretty easy to cut, pretty easy to lay down, but it was very, very messy. The glue got everywhere. It was all over the top of the tiles. It was all over my hands. It was difficult to peel the paper off. I did use Goo Gone to get it off of the tiles, which Goo Gone worked really well, but it's still like the cracks I can tell are going to be a little bit sticky. So in hindsight, I would not have done peel and stick. I would have just gotten a vinyl and a glue and glued it down myself. I mean, even there's a little piece over here that it was just too small to trust the glue, the adhesive that this comes with. So I used a wood glue, and it feels, oh, I almost pulled it off, so maybe not. I was gonna say it feels pretty secure. So here's the other side. You can see there's gonna be room for my battery here. Maybe my AC unit. There's actually quite a bit of space. And then a cooler. And I'm gonna add my cabinet with my sink on this side. I already do have the countertop cut out, but that'll be a different video. But yeah, I don't know, looks pretty good. I did also, to try and combat the stickiness, I got some black silicone and I was trying to grout it. It was really messy, so I only did like these 4 lines right here, and it was smearing everywhere. I didn't trust that I was going to be able to clean it up, so I stopped. But I did go back in with a magic eraser, and that cleaned off pretty well. But I'm honestly not sure that any of it actually stayed in the grout. It's hard to tell the difference. So based on how sticky this still, I guess, yeah, there's some spots that are still pretty sticky. I might have to go back in with that just to cover up that stickiness. But anyway, the floor was only $60, so I guess I can't complain too much. But yep, there it is. And then again, of course, I have my bed, but that's another video as well.